Yo, I know I'm not tripping. What is that? What the? What?
For decades, the ongoing mystery surrounding UFOs has captivated people.
It's moving really weird. It's like spinning, and it's got like another disc inside of it that's spinning.
But perhaps even more intriguing are the rumors of a secret group of government agents who investigate them.
They started their UFO research programs all the way back in 1947.
Dubbed the Men in Black. Many believe they have evidence of alien visitation.
If we really are dealing with an extraterrestrial presence, the consequences are world-changing.
In 2017, this secret group's highly classified mission was broadcast on the major networks, with reporters showing surprise and excitement, like this.
We may not know if aliens exist, but it turns out our government had a special team of UFO hunters that was trying to find out.
Funded by a secret multi-million-dollar program, the Men in Black do exist. Their findings hidden, until now.
I think people were shocked to learn that the US government was taking it seriously.
I'd been behind that radar system for many, many, many years. I'd never seen anything like that.
Finally, we're going to hear incontrovertible proof that there are aliens in our airspace.
Politicians don't typically like talking about UFOs, and when President Trump was asked to, his answer to one news program was unsurprisingly dismissive.
People are saying they're seeing UFOs. Do I believe it? Not particularly.
Denial after denial has only fueled the public's desire to find the truth. John Greenwald runs a website called The Black Vault, which has forced the US government to declassify millions of pages of documents, including many about UFOs.
For more than 20 years, one of the main focus areas of my research was to prove that the US government and military was not only seeing UFOs, they were encountering UFOs, and on top of all that, they were absolutely lying about it.
But just recently, an incredible story hit the headlines. And it changed everything.
I was a longtime reporter for the New York Times. My background was really investigative reporting. So I dealt with a wide range of topics, from the mafia to Nazi war criminals to corrupt politicians. And as I like to say, a story is a story.
In 2017, Ralph Blumenthal was handed a very different kind of investigation.
The story came to me in October when my good friend said she had just attended a meeting in Washington, D.C. with a number of top officials of the Pentagon and the head of a secret program to investigate UFOs, and he was resigning in protest against the lack of support at the Pentagon. And that sounded like a good story, so we took it to the New York Times.
The article revealed the existence of a secret Pentagon department called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, whose job was to investigate UFO sightings. Television news was quick to spread the story like wildfire, as seen on this news program.
The Pentagon officially acknowledging its Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program for the first time. The New York Times reports the program remains in existence and has continued to investigate episodes brought to them by service members.
I think people were shocked to learn that the United States military were encountering these unidentified flying objects, and on top of all that, the US government was taking it seriously.
The story ran on a Sunday on page 1, a few days before Christmas, 2017. And the fact that the New York Times was really putting its credibility behind the story and putting it on page 1 strengthened the impact.
This was one of those moments that, when the history of the UFO phenomenon is written, will be pivotal.
There was now evidence of a secret program staffed by agents whose job was to investigate UFOs for the US government. To the ordinary citizen, these were the real men in black. The man behind the expose was Luis Elizondo, a former counterintelligence officer who'd served in the US Army for 20 years.
Luis Elizondo served in a variety of sensitive posts abroad. From what we could see, he was a very highly placed intelligence operative.
He was, according to them, the director of this secret program within the Pentagon to look into UFOs, or what they were now calling unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs.
We would talk to him at some length on a number of occasions. His job was to head ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. He was not getting the support in the Pentagon that he was hoping for. He wanted to see this subject examined publicly, which is why he resigned.
In a damning resignation letter addressed to the Undersecretary of Defense, Elizondo wrote, "Despite overwhelming evidence, certain individuals remain staunchly opposed to further research on what could be a tactical threat to our pilots, sailors, and soldiers, and perhaps even an existential threat to our national security." Elizondo would not reveal details of his top-secret investigations. But his story was accompanied by tantalizing evidence. Videos shot by US Navy fighter planes during encounters with unidentified flying objects.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
Well, one of the most famous videos shows a Navy gun camera tracking an object that seems to be zipping above the waves. And the camera is having some trouble keeping up with it because it's going so fast. And finally, it locks in on it because that's the technology that the military has. Another video showed what looked like a spinning top, sort of leaning over on its side.
There's a thing. It's rotating.
We released two at the time and later a third video from the Navy of thermal images of these objects. In other words, showing that they really exist. I mean, they were just blips, but they were real. So it caused a sensation.
There was no official release by the Department of Defense, so it was hard to know what we were looking at. Were we looking at a true UFO, or were we looking at some kind of top-secret US technology? So until that point, was I intrigued? Absolutely.
Look at that thing, dude.
While the Pentagon remained tight-lipped, across the globe, experts came forward to offer theories on the Tic Tac videos and to help figure out what UFO secrets the men in black at ATIP might have discovered.
Okay.
Along with Navy witnesses were investigative journalists and top scientists. The ranks even included men in black from other countries.
I have been called a real-life man in black. I was certainly a government UFO investigator and government UFO researcher.
Other countries have been ahead of us, actually, in studying this phenomenon. The French, the Belgians, South Americans have not faced the same stigma as we have, or at least overcome it better in terms of putting their scientists to work at it.
Nick Pope worked for the British government. In the 1990s, he ran a secret UFO desk at the Ministry of Defense.
It wasn't like the X-Files. We didn't go out and run around dark warehouses or anything like that. It was much more headquarters-based. We would get 200 or 300 reports each year. My job was to investigate, interview the witnesses, check the radar tapes. What we were doing was highly classified, secret UK eyes only. The December 2017 story by the New York Times, this was a bombshell. And I think it was a real wake-up call for people who for years had been told that this was all just crazy talk.
Following the article, the search for answers took a dramatic turn when US Navy servicemen and women came forward. Kevin Day is a retired radar operator who was on board a Navy warship the day one of the Tic Tac videos was recorded.
I was a senior chief petty officer, operations specialist, Top Gun graduate. I'd been behind that radar system for many, many, many years. I'd never seen anything like that.
Thanks to witnesses like Kevin, it's now possible to piece together the story of what's known as the Nimitz encounter. In 2004, a fleet of US Navy ships called an Aircraft Carrier Strike Group was on maneuvers off the Southern Californian coast in readiness for sailing to the Persian Gulf. At its head was the USS Nimitz, one of the largest warships in the world, capable of carrying over 60 aircraft. At its flank was the cruiser, USS Princeton, where Kevin Day was in charge of the US Navy's most advanced radar system of the era.
My role in the radar room on the Princeton was to track everything and identify it. And then if it becomes a threat, to actually defend the strike group.
During several days of maneuvers, Kevin was being plagued by strange readings on his screens.
We were down off the coast of San Diego, and I started to notice these really strange contacts. They were appearing in 5 to 10 at a time, and we tracked them from lower Earth orbit down to 80,000 feet, and then they would sit there for a while, and then they would drop to 28,000 feet and start tracking south towards us at 100 knots. I gotta tell you, I'd never seen anything fly like that. Usually things going 100 knots are gonna fall out of the sky.
For days, the readings disappeared as mysteriously as they had appeared. But one afternoon, just as the Nimitz was preparing to launch a squadron of F-18 fighter jets, the unidentified objects just kept coming.
I was concerned about safety of flight. We were about ready to do a major air defense exercise where I was going to fill that airspace with aircraft, and that was going to put these objects, whatever the heck they were, right in the middle of my playground area. All of a sudden on the radio, in the speaker overhead, we're hearing, oh my God, I'm engaged, I'm engaged. This Tic Tac looking object turns on him, it does a little dogfight on him. I'd never seen anything like that.
Off the coast of San Diego, a group of UFOs has appeared on radar, headed toward a fleet of US Navy warships.
I gotta tell you, I'd never seen anything fly like that.
Officer Kevin Day sounds the alarm, and 2 F-18 fighter jets are scrambled with orders to track down the mysterious objects.
It's a pretty standard intercept. Got 2 vertical objects in the same vertical piece of sky. On the 2D display, they look merged now, and all of a sudden on the radio, in the speaker overhead, we're hearing, oh my God, I'm engaged, I'm engaged. And I'm watching radar, and this thing drops from 28,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean. And I found out later the next day, 0.78 seconds. In less than a second, no sonic boom, no nothing. I'd been behind that radar system for many, many, many years. I'd never seen anything like that, either before or since.
The 2 pilots with a bird's eye view of the UFO were Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich.
We were able to then visually pick up what we describe as a Tic Tac, because that's what it looked like, this white oblong-shaped object that was moving very fast. It surprised us.
Commander Fravor later spoke vividly about the Tic Tac's maneuvers on a podcast.
It's going north, south, east, west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right, at will. I mean, you're talking something that's just sitting in space, in the wind, and then it just all of a sudden accelerates.
This Tic Tac looking object turns on him, it does a little dogfight on him, and it also just takes off. and leaves them there.
The former head of the Pentagon UFO department went public because he was concerned these objects could be a threat to national security. But further details about these Tic Tac objects were still top secret. So a group of scientists, led by Robert Powell, decided to perform their own analysis, based on the witnesses' descriptions of the object's phenomenal performance.
When we began to investigate the USS Nimitz, USS Princeton, F-18 encounters, we wrote a 250-page, basically, report on what encompassed the entire event. The pilot, who is at 20,000 feet with his co-pilot, they see the object and they describe it as being shot out of a gun. I mean, these are accelerations that are phenomenal. We had radar information, testimony from all the radar operators indicating that they were viewing an object capable of moving at speeds that was in tens of thousands of miles per hour. The acceleration values we found were G-forces over 100 Gs, sometimes approaching 1,000 G-forces. At 13 Gs to 15 Gs, the American F-35 fighter just tears apart in the sky. 50 Gs is the most an artillery shell, which is just a chunk of metal, can survive. And we're talking, in this case, of 100 to 1,000 G-forces, which if a human being, for example, was in that, you would basically be splattered into nothing but liquid mesh.
When people looked at the Tic Tac video and some of the other US Navy videos, they noticed movement, sudden acceleration.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at the fly.
Which seemed so bizarre that really it's not something that would have a pilot in it. Certainly no human pilot.
The report ruled that Tic Tacs were likely to be unmanned, with some deliberate force guiding the movements, possibly driven by artificial intelligence.
What really made these objects stand out to the US Navy was a number of things. It has no wings, it has no forms of propulsion, but it moves its tip towards the pilot's plane as he's diving down towards it. And as he's going towards it, it comes around and it's doing a pirouette circle, and he's doing a circle as they're approaching each other.
So inevitably the question came up, well, could this be AI? If it's extraterrestrial, AI-controlled drones or probes, perhaps piloted by some sort of machine intelligence, some sort of extraterrestrial AI.
I believe that it's worth examining a hypothesis that there is some intelligent force that guides these objects in our atmosphere.
I mean, I have to keep an open mind about it. I personally don't think it was a living organism. Whatever it was intelligent. And highly capable, too.
As someone who is highly skeptical about these claims, I've tried to rule out that there could be some otherworldly civilization that's visiting Earth, and we just happen to be seeing their technology piloted by artificial intelligence. But you can't. You just simply can't.
If the US government knew more about the objects encountered by its warships, it wasn't saying, leaving UFO researchers to speculate, and not just about what they were, but also why they targeted the USS Nimitz. Some even suggested it was because the ship was nuclear-powered.
The idea that there's a connection between our discovery of nuclear warfare and UFOs and flying saucers is something that dates way back to the beginning of the UFO era.
The nuclear age began on July the 16th, 1945, 210 miles south of Los Alamos, New Mexico, with the explosion of Trinity, the world's first plutonium bomb. 2 years later, and just 100 miles away, the Roswell incident kick-started a wave of UFO sightings.
The United States Air Force is called upon to investigate reports of unidentified flying objects.
So the question is, why? Why did it start at the same time as our atomic age? Just from a scientific viewpoint, it's much easier to detect nuclear emissions.
What a number of people in the UFO community believe is that those nuclear explosions first put us on the radar of extraterrestrial civilizations nearby. So it's no surprise that we see a number of cases where UFOs have been seen in close proximity to nuclear facilities.
(1980), and a pair of US Air Force bases in England play host to one of the most infamous modern UFO sightings. Former RAF air stations, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, were located close to a remote area of woodland called Rendlesham Forest.
These were among the most strategically important bases in the entire NATO alliance.
Bentwaters was home to some of the US Air Force's most advanced aircraft of the time. It also held America's Cold War arsenal of bombs and missiles. And huge underground bunkers were rumored to contain nuclear warheads.
The Rendlesham Forest incident started in the early hours of 26th of December. A number of people on guard patrol saw strange lights in the forest, and their initial thought was that an aircraft might have crashed. When they got out there, they found not some vague shape in the distance or lights in the sky, but a UFO.
The guards in the forest sketched what they saw, and the statements they made described an astonishing sight. A triangular metallic glowing object with flashing lights.
This is something that some of the witnesses say landed. So this is about as up close and personal as you can get. On the next night, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt went out into the forest to debunk all this UFO nonsense. But he was not able to debunk it because he ended up a witness himself.
Suddenly caught in his own UFO encounter, Holt was faced with 3 star-like objects making sharp angular movements in the sky.
He saw this UFO in the sky, zigzagging around, performing extraordinary maneuvers. He said it was almost as if the thing was conducting a grid search.
What Holt reported next is chilling. One UFO entered the base's airspace and hovered overhead.
He described how this thing shot a beam of light, a narrow beam of light, down at the ground just in front of him and his men. It has been alleged that those light beams not only penetrated the weapons storage areas, but in some way affected the ordnance that was stored there.
Holt's story has led to suggestions that the UFO may have switched off nuclear warheads. But there's no record of a bunker in the original reports. And some have questioned whether Holt and other witnesses might have confused their stories over the years.
The problem is, you get the original account, and then people get asked about it more and more and more, and it's a natural sort of thing that you see in other areas of folklore. One of the American airmen claims that he saw an actual physical object. So every time it's told, it gets better in that the object becomes ever more elaborate, ever more lights on it, that he not only approaches it and sees it, but touches it. Now, that's not to say that nothing actually triggered the story in the first place, but I think we should be very skeptical about things that people have said happened to them 20 or 30 years later. It started as a real experience, but it's become a legend.
Rendlesham remains a mystery. But it was not the first time that UFOs have been accused of tampering with nuclear weapons. Robert Salas is a retired US Air Force officer. In 1967, he was based at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana.
I was involved with the 341st Strategic Missile Wing. We had something like 150 missiles ready to launch, given the order.
Malmstrom was one of 5 sites that housed the heart of the United States nuclear arsenal. Each of its 150 warheads delivered a 1 megaton blast, over 50 times greater than the Hiroshima bomb.
So March 24th, 1967, while I was in command of the site, I was about 60 feet underground in a hardened concrete and steel capsule. And sometime in the evening, I get a call from my top guard upstairs. He called down and said that he was seeing strange lights in the sky that could do things like stop in midair, reverse course, make 90-degree turns, and there was no engine noise. I said, "You mean like UFOs?" About 5 minutes later, he calls back, and this time he's extremely frightened. He says he's got all the guards out there that are looking at this orange-reddish light that's pulsating. It's hovering just above the front gate, and he wants me to tell him what he should do about it. And obviously, I thought that now this was a pretty dramatic situation. You know, we really could be under some sort of an attack. And then we got some bells and whistles going off, klaxons. We look over to our board, and some of our missiles started going from green to red, which meant that the missiles were unlaunchable. They were disabled. We lost 20 nuclear missiles during a time when UFOs were observed over our facilities.
I believe there's sufficient evidence of UAP activity around nuclear sites to validate an investigation into that subject deeply.
Some people point to extraterrestrial visitation as some sort of warning to humanity. We can switch off these weapons at will. Don't try and use them against us. Don't use them against yourself. Don't blow yourselves up.
Shining a beam of light on our nuclear weapons. To me, that's a message. It's a message that says, get rid of your nuclear weapons.
There was essentially a second program.
I mean, there were papers on anti-gravity and wormholes that would be needed for interstellar travel.
Do we have neighbors on a planet that was so close? I mean, that would be incredibly exciting.
In 2017, the New York Times revealed to the world that men in black are real and working for a US government program called ATIP that was set up to investigate UFO encounters with Navy fighter planes.
I think people were shocked to learn that the United States military were encountering these unidentified flying objects, and on top of all that, the US government was taking it seriously.
3 videos of tic-tac-shaped flying objects sparked a frenzy of speculation.
My gosh.
While the media was looking for answers from the Pentagon, a very different group of investigators was looking for evidence in space.
The acronym SETI stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So that's one of our projects to find not just life beyond Earth, but life that's clever, intelligent, the way Homo sapiens is.
Most SETI revolves around the use of radio telescopes to listen for signals from other civilizations. I think it's one of the best opportunities we have of finding scientific proof of the existence of extraterrestrial life.
You take these big antennas, you point them in the direction of a nearby star system, and you try and find a signal coming from that direction, the kind of signal that only a transmitter could make.
The search for life beyond our planet has been accelerated by the advent of new space technology. In the last 25 years, astronomers have discovered the existence of 4,000 exoplanets, some of which are similar to Earth and could be home to intelligent life.
When I was a kid, scientists weren't sure, were planets commonplace or were they rare? Nobody knew because we hadn't found any around any other stars. But beginning in 1995, we did start finding these things, and what we know today is that essentially all stars have planets. Planets are really commonplace. And so maybe life is commonplace, and if we just look hard enough, we'll find that it's all over the place, including intelligent life.
Out in the universe, there are many, many, many planets that might be conducive to life-friendly conditions. We know that on Earth, life can occupy some pretty unpleasant conditions, and so kind of all of that mean that it's more likely than not that there's some kind of life out there.
In 2019, SETI scientists found a signal coming from the star system Proxima Centauri.
That's the nearest other star system to our own solar system. It's only a little over 4 light years away. And this signal, well, that's exactly the kind of signal that comes from a transmitter.
Proxima Centauri is the closest star to our Sun. It's located within the Alpha Centauri solar system. And recently, astronomers have found signs that one of the planets here might be habitable.
So was this it? Did we have neighbors on a planet that was so close? That would be incredibly exciting. But how long would it take for us to go there and actually check it out? Well, you could take the fastest rocket that we build, like the one that went to Pluto, and it goes 10 miles a second. That's pretty fast, 10 miles a second, right? But even at that speed, it would take 75,000 years to get to Proxima Centauri.
The interesting thing that I find with the SETI project is they're similar to me in that they believe that there's intelligence out there, much more advanced than us. But where they and I disengage is, are they capable of getting to our solar system? And because we are not capable of getting to another solar system, they assume the vice versa is true.
Currently, there's no way of knowing if the objects recorded by US Navy pilots could have traveled from a neighboring part of our galaxy. But there is evidence to suggest that the government UFO investigators at ATIP wanted to find out.
There was essentially a second program This one was referred to as OSAP.
The Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, or OSAP, was the scientific sister program to ATIP.
This was funded by an intelligence arm called the Defense Intelligence Agency. I tried to figure out exactly what it was and filed some Freedom of Information Act requests. The result was a list of 38 reports that OSAP had created.
They set out 38 scientific and technical studies. There were papers on anti-gravity, papers on warp drive and wormholes. It was all about the sort of exotic theoretical physics that would be needed for interstellar travel.
The Pentagon denied that OSAP's research had anything to do with UFOs. Instead, its purpose was to investigate possible advances in aerospace technology over the next 40 years. But one study on the list cast doubt on this claim.
For anyone saying, well, why is this to do with UFOs? One of the studies was about the Drake equation. And the only purpose of the Drake equation is to come up with an estimate of the number of communicable civilizations in our galaxy.
So for an aerospace application program, looking 40 years into the future, what is a Drake equation report doing in there? That's all about calculating alien civilizations in the cosmos.
Many believe the OSAP documents are proof the government is investigating the existence of aliens and their ability to visit Earth. And although they've found no hard evidence of extraterrestrials yet, SETI's search continues.
I think the current generation of radio telescopes are just about on the cusp of where they need to be, and the next generation will have the power to detect, certainly, any civilization in our small part of the Milky Way galaxy. So these are exciting times.
You know, are we close to finding ET? Personally, I think if we don't succeed within 50 years, by that point, we will have looked at so many other star systems that the fact that we're not finding any signals may mean something. But it doesn't mean anything yet today. We haven't looked at enough of the sky.
What is that? What?
We all of a sudden saw three lights coming from the horizon. The object hovered 30 seconds.
This theory has suggested that you get something that's almost alive.
This is a really far out idea.
Yo, I know I'm not tripping. What is that?
Across the globe, UFOs have been baffling onlookers for centuries.
It's moving really weird. It's like spinning, and it's got like another disc inside of it that's spinning.
And one of the most common types of sightings is mysterious moving lights.
People have had different sightings of balls of light, fireballs, orbs. There are obviously fireball meteors. But then you get more interesting UFO cases that you can't explain in conventional terms.
Over 20 years ago, lights like these caught the attention of British men in black. The number of sightings of unexplained objects was stacking up. Even RAF pilots were reporting them. Concerned there was a threat to national security, the Ministry of Defense turned to the UFO desk for answers.
A colleague of mine in the Defense Intelligence staff and I got together, and what we decided was that we should effectively undertake an intelligence assessment of UFOs. What are the threats? What are the opportunities? What does the science tell us?
The study was given the codename Project Condign. It remained top secret until 2006, when investigative journalist David Clark had its findings declassified.
I was given a brown envelope with this huge 3-volume report, and quite clearly a lot of it was easily explainable. If you look through the conclusions, vast majority of reported sightings could be explained by ordinary objects. And a lot of those things turned out to be ordinary aircraft, balloons, natural phenomena.
But several mysteries remained. Crucially, moving balls of light that the scientists called buoyant plasmas.
In some instances, they thought that these plasmas could not only change shape, but could interact in some way with witnesses, maybe even respond to stimuli.
The top-secret government report had set out to explain all UFO sightings, but instead created a new mystery, suggesting that plasmas were moving freely through our skies.
This is a really far-out idea, and yet there's no hard evidence to support this theory.
Å, fy fader! Jeg filmer det, jeg har det på tape!
Not far away in Norway, more evidence was emerging.
Hesdalen in Norway is an area where over decades people have reported strange balls of light.
They're called the Hesdalen Lights, and like the plasma described in the British UFO report, they move. From as far back as the 1980s, these lights have made hundreds of appearances and captured the attention of Italian astrophysicist Massimo Teodorani.
I went to Hesdalen in order to try to take data on this kind of phenomenon. We all of a sudden saw 3 lights that were coming from the horizon from south. These lights were a triangular shape, but it was moving. And it came up to over our head. The object hovered, I would say 30 seconds. It rotated, and all of a sudden it disappeared over our heads. We were not expecting it at all, and it was very spectacular.
After years of study, Teodorani thinks he knows what might cause the plasma to appear.
It can happen that sometimes underground you have quartz that are subject to tectonic stress.
The theory is that when quartz, buried deep in the earth, comes under pressure, it emits a charge that electrifies the skies above.
In that case, you liberate electricity in the air, and you create plasma lights in the atmosphere. But there is a mystery here, a big mystery. We don't know why these lights last a so long time in the sky. If it is only plasma, it should vanish.
But instead, they move, change shape, and change direction. The British UFO report couldn't explain these mysterious moving plasmas. But now scientists think they may have found the answer.
A group of scientists discovered that when plasmas interact with the particles, dust particles for instance, the plasma start to behave in a strange way. They are making a spiral motion resembling exactly what's happening in the DNA in biology. So strangely, it seems to be another kind of life.
This theory has suggested that within these plasma phenomena, you get almost something akin to human DNA. You get something that's almost alive. It's an intriguing theory. I think it's one of those theories that is a little problematic, that it seems to put increasing layers and layers onto a theory, all of which has to be correct to try and explain these UFO cases.
To me, it's almost like invoking one unexplained thing that we don't know about, i.e. dusty plasmas, to explain another unexplained thing that we don't know about, potentially UFOs.
I mean, a living plasma entity would be a fascinating thing. And if something simulates life, does that mean it is itself alive? Or is it just doing a very good job of looking like it?
Living plasma is one of many theories to explain strange objects in our skies. But the US government and its UFO investigators have offered no explanations of their own.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
Some suspected they might be hiding information on the Tic Tac objects, and others pointed to the lack of detail in Luis Elizondo's account of the Pentagon UFO program, and questioned whether its job really was to clear up the UFO mystery after all. Suspicion surrounding the motives of the Men in Black dates all the way back to the UFO craze that created them.
Looked like a falling star. It was wet and kind of coming down.
I mean, I know myself I saw it, but I can't fathom it because it seems so unreal.
The world was essentially in turmoil, still trying to clean up what happened during World War II. People were nervous that maybe there were Nazi technology that had survived after the war.
You also, at the same time, had the Cold War being initiated, and paranoia in the U.S. was running high. I mean, we literally thought that the Soviets were going to come and bomb us at any minute.
So now, in 1947, there's a flying saucer craze. People were nervous that the Soviet Union had highly advanced technology that they were potentially now going to point at us. So when the UFO craze happened, the general public was scared. Not necessarily of aliens, but scared about a phenomena that nobody could explain.
In response to the widespread panic, the US government launched a formal investigation into UFO sightings, and the Men in Black were born.
They started their UFO research programs all the way back in 1947, and really everything is referred to as Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book aimed to calm the nerves of the general public.
In 1952, the American people eagerly awaited news about the truth behind UFOs. When the findings of the Men in Black were revealed by Air Force Major General John Sanford.
Since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports. We have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft.
Probably their favorite explanations were it was the Star Capella, the Star Sirius, or it was a balloon, or it was another aircraft. And then their most famous explanation was it's swamp gas.
A little bit of smoke light appears here, it goes out, another one appears over here, and sometimes this gas will gather into a bulb and actually float away.
Project Blue Book came to an end in 1969, when a review found that the study of UFOs had not found anything of scientific value in over 21 years. But many people were left unsatisfied by the conclusions.
The cases that they solved were laughable in many instances, where active duty United States military men and women were seeing things fly in the sky, reputable witnesses, and they would say, that's the planet Venus. You know, the planet Venus doesn't make a right angle turn and speed off in the sky. I think the true objective of Project Blue Book wasn't an investigation, but rather an explanation. The whole UFO thing, they wanted it to go away.
As they shut the project down, not all of its 12,000 UFO reports had been explained.
At the end of it all, they said only 701 remained unidentified. But now the question is, do you believe them?
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say to that kind of thing?
Well, these charges are absolutely untrue.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
In the decades following Project Blue Book, the truth behind some of the sightings emerged. And it appeared the men in black had been covering for secret U.S. defense projects.
CIA came out and mentioned that specifically. UFOs were used to cover the U-2 program because we had commercial pilots that were seeing things flying at 90,000 feet, which they knew no aircraft could find at.
In that circumstance, you would far rather it was reported as a UFO than as we've seen America's next spy plane. This is what it looks like.
I think it's absolutely possible that the Nimitz encounter in 2004 was American technology. You have to keep in mind, with American classified technology, it is not uncommon for huge aircraft to be flying in our skies for decades before the general public even knows the craft exists. So will we find out in the year 2035 or 2050 that this was highly classified technology? Maybe.
Researchers who believe the Tic Tacs are our own technology have suggested that US Navy pilots and radar operators are being used as guinea pigs by the US government's own armed forces.
People have speculated about so-called black project secretly being tested in a sort of live, real-world way against another part of the US military. It's the best way, perhaps, to see. Do people track it on radar? Are they physically able to keep pace with this object? So that's a possibility. Another very disturbing possibility is that it might be Russia and China, adversary technology. We hear about Chinese hypersonic missiles, about AI-controlled drones. This is the next level of battle space technology. Has somebody made a quantum leap breakthrough?
While many experts agree the videos show objects that could be explained by current or next-generation technology, others argue that this ignores the personal accounts of highly trained Navy eyewitnesses.
We've got testimony indicating that they were viewing an object capable of moving at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Normally, even when we talk about hyper missiles, you're talking about 4,000 to 5,000 miles an hour. So to have any object capable of moving at tens of thousands of miles an hour is well beyond any capabilities that any nation states have.
I'm still undecided about those videos, so I'm not yet prepared to say that this couldn't be our own technology. Could this be something extraterrestrial? Many possibilities are still in play.
So there was something beneath the water. They had no idea what it was.
Our sonar control operators actually heard these objects enter the water.
When you're looking at this through the eyes of an intelligence officer in government, you figure this means something.
We have a UFO to the right here.
Son el zoom. Desapareció.
Across the globe, people have recorded thousands of UFO sightings. But the Tic Tac videos, leaked in 2017, are seen by many as the most significant yet. Filmed using US Navy infrared cameras, the videos have led some to believe that cutting-edge technology is capturing UFOs that were once invisible. In 2016, a police helicopter fitted with a similar camera system was flying over the Bristol Channel near the border of England and Wales.
So in this case, under sort of low level, under 1,000 feet, they didn't see anything visually, but this infrared camera picked up an object that was moving quite a pace.
The object was moving so quickly, the helicopter couldn't keep up. Officers continued tracking it for 7 minutes. Police needed help identifying the mysterious object in their airspace. But instead of sending the video evidence to the intelligence services, they did something remarkable. They released it on social media.
So at the time, when it came out, there's experts from all over the world that immediately start looking at this thing, and there was a whole host of possible explanations for what had been seen.
Twitter lit up with theories of aliens, a UFO, balloon, drone, or even a Chinese lantern.
They didn't think it was a Chinese lantern because it was moving against the wind.
The drone idea was dismissed because it was moving too fast, and a balloon would not be able to fly into the wind either. To this day, the sighting remains unexplained. UFO investigators have commented on the video's striking resemblance to the Tic Tac footage shot by US Navy planes in 2004. They've also made another link. Water. When Top Gun pilots from the USS Nimitz engaged with UFOs over the Pacific Ocean, these objects were not the only strange activity they witnessed.
There was a report by several of the pilots that they could see some disturbance on very clear water beneath it. So there was something beneath the water. They had no idea what it was.
In the days leading up to the encounter, radar operator Kevin Day had seen these objects multiple times. On one occasion, the Tic Tacs dropped all the way down to sea level and then vanished from his screens. His search for answers led him underwater to the fleet's submarine.
Our sonar control operators actually heard these objects actually enter the water, and then they tracked them on sonar going underneath the water at 500 knots. So these objects, whatever they were, they're transmedium. They can go through space, and apparently they can go through water, and they're not inertially affected.
Transmedium is a term given to objects that can move seamlessly between different environments.
These are objects that are moving purportedly at several hundred miles an hour under the water. We don't have that capability. We do have torpedoes, which move actually at around 100 to 150 miles per hour, which is really amazing. But we do not have the ability to move at several hundred miles an hour under the water.
The evidence for transmedium UFOs is hotly debated and disputed, but that hasn't stopped speculation.
Some people literally think it means alien bases under the sea. Other people think that water may be essential for the UFOs. I mean, all these are theories, but when you're looking at this through the eyes of an intelligence officer in government, when you see that common factor of water, you figure this means something.
Could there be intelligent life hiding out in the oceans of the world? We haven't really done a reconnaissance of every nook and cranny of the oceans. So yeah, maybe there's some aliens down there. I don't know. But I mean, what's the evidence for that?
The eyewitness reports from radar operators and pilots suggest that Tic Tac objects were capable of feats well beyond what can be seen in the videos alone. But if any evidence once existed, it's now gone.
I was going to draft an after-action message and route it up the chain of command on the ship. I turned to the technician, and he looks at me, and he said, a couple guy in what appeared to be Air Force uniforms came on board our ship, and they took all of our radar data and all of our communications data. Some of the people on the other ships have reported the same thing happening. Our data was taken for some reason.
Some believe the missing evidence could still exist. By 2020, the Pentagon was getting squeezed for answers, and the public wanted to know what its secret UFO program had discovered.
The ramp up to the UAP report released by the government, man, that was exciting.
This would be the moment that the president got up and said, "My fellow Americans, people of the world, we're not alone."
Two years after the New York Times first published videos of US Navy jets encountering mysterious flying objects, something happened in the Washington corridors of power. The Pentagon quietly admitted the videos were real, confirming that unidentified aerial phenomena were making incursions into their training exercises. The news had a big impact and put the US government under pressure to reveal the truth about UFOs. But no one expected what happened next. In December 2020, President Trump signed a bill containing an astonishing demand for the Pentagon to brief Congress on all it knew about UFOs within 180 days.
The ramp up to the UAP report released by the government, man, that was exciting. And I think the world got excited.
There was definitely chatter online counting down to the day.
Finally, we're going to hear the proof, the incontrovertible proof that there are aliens in our airspace.
This would be the moment that the president got up and said, "My fellow Americans, people of the world, we're not alone."
We take all incursions into our operating spaces.
By any aircraft, identified or unidentified, very seriously, and investigate each one.
We are taking the entire matter seriously.
The eagerly awaited report revealed the Pentagon had investigated 144 UFO sightings since 2004 and had been able to explain just one.
The report that was released by the Pentagon is very, very significant because it shows there's been a sea change in the attitude of the American government on this subject. The last time they looked at it was during the 1950s, and the report that was produced in 1969 effectively said that they didn't need to pay any further attention to it, whereas the new report says the opposite.
The report was just a summary. And while it confirmed the existence of the $22 million program set up to investigate UFOs, it didn't offer any explanations for the UFOs themselves.
The 9 pages, as limited as they were, did say that these objects are probably real. Probably. They put that equivocation in there, but basically they were saying they're real and that they represent a potential threat to aviation.
The government basically is admitting they do not know what these objects are. And once you wrap your head around that the United States government, out of 144 objects, could only identify for certain one of them, it really brings up the question then, well, exactly what are these objects?
But the report did suggest that a brand new program had been set up to find answers.
Now we just can't walk away from this subject, right? We can't just ignore it. It's got to be evaluated. The sooner we have open hearings, the better it's going to be, because you're going to get more witnesses come forward. So it has had an impact.
The Pentagon's report sent shockwaves across the globe. Despite the report's lack of answers, this was the US government admitting UFOs were real. For Kevin Day, the former Navy radar operator who was one of the first people to witness the Tic Tac objects, this also represented proof that he was right.
I felt vindicated, man. I was laughed at, and it broke my heart, man. I gotta tell you, people I had served with my whole career were laughing at me. But when the government came out and confirmed what we had seen was real, I have been vindicated. Not just me, but Commander Fravor and the other guys and gals that were involved in this. We've all been vindicated, because this really did happen.
Well, we're on board HMS Northumberland for a new series of cat and mouse games with hostile nations. Warship Life at Sea starts Monday night at 9. And getting us in the mood for Tom Hanks Day here on Channel 5 tomorrow, it's the brilliant Green Mile next.